a lot. Good evening all, and welcome back to RASC. Welcome to Ottawa on a Friday night for the July 5th meeting of the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada, Ottawa Centre. My name is Mick Wilson. I'm the herder of cats tonight, and a special welcome to our members, new members, if there's any here tonight. Hi, hands up, clap, you here? Not a one. Or anyone that's joining us online from other RASC centres. Quick run through of the program. After me, Dave Chisholm will be doing the monthly skies as usual. We've then got a bit of a recap on the International Astronomy Day last month. A catch-up presentation on the solar eclipse from May as well. Our usual break in AstroTrivia, some practical advice on DIY astronomy projects when it's cloudy, and then as usual the observation reports, including a bit of a backlog of the videos that didn't play successfully last month or the month before. Hopefully that problem's fixed. As usual, we are recording this. It is going out live on a Zoom webinar. It will be recorded for posterity, so anything that you say or do can be held against you in the court of law. Anyone online who has a question, use the Q&A. Please don't raise your hand, and anything that you put into the chat box will be seen by all. So to Hugo, Andrea and Paul, again, my apologies for the screw up with Zoom and the video processing last month. Your content is going to be shown first thing in the observation section. 5 new members in the last month. The Almeida family, but times 3, Kevin Harrison and Francisco Talavera. So welcome all, and 55 for the year, which is about par for midway, so doing all right. Benefits of membership, the usual spiel. Great contacts, people who can advise you on how to, what it's about, theory and practice. They're all here, whether they're our invited speakers or our regular membership. By becoming a member of RASC Ottawa, you have centuries of expertise on tap to help you with your own astronomical experiences. Physical benefits include our telescope loan library, which has got at the moment, I think it's 37 telescopes available to members at no charge. Great for if you want to try before you buy, or if you're considering an upgrade. So all the details for contact on these are on the website, www.ottawa.rasc.ca. We have our members observatory, the Fred Lossing Observatory out near Almont. This is a members only or members and guests facility. There are, I think, 6 permanently housed telescopes out there these days. Plus you can of course bring your own gear or have your friends bring their gear. So it's a near dark sky facility and you're encouraged to take advantage of it. Out the back here, we have our media library, books and DVDs. Estelle, are you here? She's actually out the back organising things. Okay, so after the program tonight, Estelle will possibly still be out the back there, and you can check out the holdings and borrow things as you see fit. As a member, you also get access to the nationwide program, the observer certificates. There is a range of these which you demonstrate your expertise, whether it's in lunar observing, deep sky astrophotography, planetary imaging, whatever. Information about the certificates program is at rasc.ca. Publications, you get the bi-monthly journal of the Royal Astronomical Society. This is a more formal record of goings on through RASC as a national body. You can get the print version of that, but you get the online version as part of your sorry, you get the print version at additional cost, but you get the online version as part of your membership. Observer's Handbook, timeless classic, famous around the world. And of course, you get Astronotes, our own local, lively little newsletter prepared by Gordon Webster. So join up. As a member, you get access to the Discord server. This is informal communication channels across, again, a variety of topics, ranging from visual naked eye observing, astrophotography, various hardware sections, yada, yada. There's also members-only access to the professional level version of Astrospheric. If you don't know Astrospheric and you're an observer, it's a tool well worth having. It's an ensemble of 5 different forecast models used by Environment Canada and others, giving 48 hours or more forecast on cloud cover, transparency, seeing in general. So as an observer's tool, quite indispensable. Your membership fee for gaining access to all these wonderful benefits, a bit over $100 a year for an individual, almost $100 plus those per head costs for adults and youth to have a family membership, and a bit over $60 a year if you're under 21 years age or you're a student under 25. So in this day and age, that's about 3 cups of coffee, so pretty good value for money. Do we have any members in the news, Chris? I will skip that. Katie. Welcome.
There we go. Hi, I'm Katie. I'm the Star Party coordinator. And I just wanted to let you know of the upcoming Star Party dates. Our next one is next weekend. So I'm going to be sending out an email probably tonight asking for volunteers for either traffic or to bring your own telescope to show the public. We'll have one on August 10th, which is the day after the meeting. That's why there's no backup date. It's only on the Saturday. And then on September 14th, that's also only the Saturday because I can't make the Friday. But if anyone else wants to volunteer to run that one, then we can have a backup date. So those ones are all at the CARP Public Library. And I'm also hoping to find someone that's willing to take over the role next year. So if you're interested, please reach out to me. The email, it's down there, starparties@ottawa.rasc.ca, or you can find me today and just let me know. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thanks, Katie. Another announcement for those of you who aren't familiar with CCERA, it's the Canadian Centre for Experimental Radio Astronomy. It's not part of RASC, but we do have had a close liaison relationship for many, many years now. So they relocated to the old radomes out near Carp Airfield, not a million miles from the Deakin bunker, and that was in the course of last year, and have now refurbed a rather large aperture radio telescope dish. They've refurbed the motors and so on and rebuilding the electronics. So they are offering a 1-week summer camp with the dates given there, July 22nd through to the beginning of August, for anyone who wants to go along and learn radio astronomy. Now, when I first saw this, I assumed that it was targeted at student, that sort of pre-university or university level. But they seem to have changed the scope a bit. And so it is open to anyone. It's about $100 a day, so it's not cheap, but it is something of a once in a lifetime opportunity to actually get into some practice as well as the theory and interpretation of radio telescope data. And you're strongly encouraged to contact the URL at the bottom of the screen there. Again, all of this will be in the folder and online. So David, Ottawa skies for July, please.
So let's see what's happening in July. We're going to start with the clicker not working. Whoa, I went too far. Sorry. Let's take a look at the moon phases. Of course, the best time to see deep sky objects and various other things is on a new moon. That's tomorrow night. It's Ottawa, 100% cloud cover. Anyways, actually, it's supposed to clear up around 10 o'clock, but it's still not great skies. Full moon is on July the 21st. That means we're going to have perfectly clear skies that night. The Delta Acrid's meteor shower, July 28th and 29th. It can produce up to 20 meteors per hour at its peak. It's produced by debris left behind by comets Marsden and Crutch. It runs annually from July 12th to August 23rd and peaks this year on July the 28th and 29th. The second quarter moon will block many of the fainter meteors, but after midnight, you might be able to get out there and see some. The sun is rise and set. As you can see, the days are getting shorter, which means we don't have to stay up as late before we start our observing. Mercury, July 22nd, we have the greatest eastern elongation, so the planet's low in the western sky just after sunset. It's one of the few times that we can see Mercury. Normally, it's too close to the sun. Venus is visible in the early evening. Mars is visible before sunrise. Jupiter is visible before sunrise. Saturn, visible in the late evening and through the night. By the end of the month, it'll probably be about 10:30. Sort of towards the 1st of August, we'll be able to see Saturn in the evening skies. Uranus is visible before sunrise, and Neptune is visible late evening and through the night. And here's my cartoon of the month.
And it's not a bad Australian.
And it's not an Australian. No, this is a Canadian. Okay. There you go, Mike.
All right. Thank you, David. We have Jim Thompson online to do an intro on the recap for International Astronomy Day.
Thank you, Mick. Sorry I can't be with you all tonight. I had to head to the cottage for 3 weeks vacation. It's a bit of a drag, but I'm sure you'll understand. So Astronomy Day was on the May long weekend a couple months ago. And all in all, it was a successful event, as you're going to hear from Pierre Martin, who's going to give you a more detailed breakdown of how the day went. I just wanted to thank everybody who participated. The success of the event really relies on all of the volunteers who come out to share their views through a telescope with the public. And outreach, as we know, is an important part of our involvement in the hobby. Getting people interested in astronomy or science in general is in everyone's best interest, I think. So without further ado, I will hand things over to Pierre.
Thanks, Jim, and please be aware there is a hat being passed around collecting contributions to help you through this time of difficulty.
Oh, that's very generous, because I'm almost out of beer here, so I'm going to need some a top up soon.
Forward, backwards, and it's the laser if you want to point. Okay, that's forward. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Okay, good evening, everyone. So I'll do, no, oh, there we go. Okay, so yeah, I'll do a little recap on International Astronomy Day that we had on Saturday, May 18th. So this event has been held almost every year outside of chapters in the East End, almost every year since 2001, in fact. So a few exceptions, during the pandemic, we held the event online. It was a virtual event that was very successful. So it was our first years collaborating more closely between the Ottawa Valley Astronomy and Observers Group, or the OAOG, and the RASC. So we've been collaborating at the event together and basically joining forces. So basically we're back now that the pandemic is over. We're back at chapters doing the event in person, which is great to see people and to see the equipment and all kinds of displays. So it's essentially an all-day event. So it goes on from morning all the way till evening if the weather cooperates. And we have ongoing support from the parking lot plaza and chapters. So we're able to hold the event every year with their support. And the event is promoted quite heavily through the OAOG's Facebook page, as well as other means by posters and word of mouth. And even some of the local restaurants in the plaza, they announced the event, or they posted our flyers for people to see. So on very successful years, the event can draw as many as 2,000 to 3,000 people throughout the entire day. So this year wasn't quite as successful because we didn't have the best weather conditions. So it was mostly cloudy until mid-afternoon or so, and then it cleared up. It was a little bit of a tough decision to do the go or no go on the Saturday or the Sunday, because we knew the Sunday looked very sunny, perfect day. But we knew we would have more participants and more public attendance on the Saturday. And it looked very promising, at least for the evening hours, which is where most of the action happens during the Star Party. So we took a chance. We went with the Saturday, and it turned out to be actually a fine day despite all, just except for the clouds until late in the day. So these events are always fun and educational, and it's very rewarding to interact with the public. Move the slide. There's all these photos are from Nathalie Legault. So typically we set up tables near the front entrance, and they contain all kinds of free handouts, old magazines, astronomy magazines that we want to give away to the public, all kinds of different papers, information that are useful for someone who knows nothing about astronomy, which is typical for the visitors that we see, and they'd like to get some information. And here's some more pictures. So typically during the day, there's several telescopes set up, and various solar filters, whether it's visible light for the sun or H-alpha. And it's a good chance to have really good conversations with the public, because it's not so busy during the daytime. It's more like a trickle of people coming in and out, and it gives a good chance to talk and for people to check out the different telescopes. And even for us members to see what's around and to have a chance to catch up with other members. And in the past several years, video imaging has really come along to help people or a larger number of people to see objects on the screen rather than an eyepiece. And it's especially useful for star parties where perhaps someone might have difficulty looking in through an eyepiece, or the angle is awkward. And the video imaging can really solve that problem. So a good part of the fun is seeing the wide variety of instruments on site. Some that excel for visual observing, and others that are really great imaging rigs. You see a little bit of everything, and some very simple setups. And I find the public is always fascinated seeing just how well you can see the moon or bright planets through a very small telescope. So it doesn't need to be aperture or anything that's really huge, but something that's compact and easy to use and not as expensive can produce some very rewarding results. So obviously during the day, the solar observing is a big part of the highlight, and we had a good number of solar telescopes this year to take advantage of that. And as the day goes on, the sun sets and it starts to get darker. That's where people start coming in big numbers. It starts to get really busy on the site. And it's like people are just converging on the site from every direction. And suddenly you're surrounded. It's like a big party. That's the highlight of the day. So in some cases, we had some long lineups of people waiting for views through the telescopes. And I was quite interested to see, like, a lot of people really want to try to get images of the moon with their phones. And so they bring it up to the eyepiece, and sometimes it's a little tricky to get the things lined up right. But there was a good number of people who were able to get excellent images just hand-holding their phone into the eyepiece without the bracket or anything like that, and just taking a few snapshots until they got one that was nice, and then their reaction was priceless. They were like, "Oh my gosh, I got a great picture of the moon. I'll share that with everyone." So it's always fun to see the reaction that people have. People from all ages will stop by at this event. So the big part of the evening, where we had the star party for the moon, this year was really just the moon that was the highlight. There was no bright planets, which was a little unfortunate, but we still had a lot of fun, and people were not disappointed by the views. There was a few video setups, a couple of video setups doing some deep sky, able to get I think M13 and M57, a couple of bright objects. But unfortunately, because we're in the middle of the parking lot of Chapters, we're surrounded by massive light pollution. We're very limited what we can do visually. So it's really just the moon and bright planets. So part of the reason we set up there at Chapters is because we're there to be where people are, where the crowds are, to make it as easy as possible for people to get to us. And then the next good step, and a lot of us were telling people, hey, you know, if you're interested, come on out to the RASC CARP Star Nights. Those are a lot of fun, and you'll be able to see more objects because it's a darker sky, it's a little further from the city, and you'll be able to see star clusters, nebula, and galaxies that we're absolutely unable to show you here in the parking lot. So it's really a fun-filled day. It often takes just one look for someone to have a curiosity and possibly even a lifelong interest. So sharing our love of astronomy allows us to connect with other people. It also allows us to appreciate the beauty of the night sky and everything that it offers. So if you haven't attended a public observing session or a public star night, I would highly recommend them. They're not only a lot of fun, but they're contagious. So now my part two for my presentation, I'm going to talk about my April 8th solar eclipse expedition with Denis Legault, who we traveled together to see this. So total solar eclipses are it's one of nature's most amazing displays, most awe-inspiring and spectacular events. Many would say that it's even a life-changing event. So I was able to see the 2017 eclipse in Idaho. A friend and I, we drove all the way there to be in the best weather prospect possible and to witness what for me was my first ever total solar eclipse in 2017. So after that event, I guess I was hooked. I was determined that 2024, I wouldn't miss it. I would do whatever it took to see it. So my big hope, though, was to be able to see this one close to home, because we were fortunate in this rare case of having such a spectacular sky phenomena happen so close to Ottawa. It doesn't happen very often. So my priority was to hopefully try to see it as close as possible to home and get a really good show. So Denis Legault and we spoke, and a few days before the eclipse, we talked about different possible locations we could go to. Denis mentioned he had relatives in Cornwall and in Sherbrooke. His daughter had just moved in Sherbrooke a year ago. So Sherbrooke was one of the really good locations deep in the path of totality. So that was our preferred spot to go to. But of course, the weather was the main consideration. So as always, I had my eyes glued on all the weather maps and all the forecasts, the different weather models. I think I had about like 10 different weather models opened up on different web pages on my phone at one point, and just comparing each, trying to see what it showed. Amazingly, in this circumstance, the weather models were super consistent. This does not happen very often. Every time I try to predict where the clouds are going to be for meteor showers or other sky events, things always change, especially if you're looking more than 5 days ahead with the models. But this time it were very consistent, so that's usually a good sign. And right up until the day before the eclipse, it was still very consistent. It was pushing in a little bit quicker, so it was starting to show more cirrus clouds around Ottawa and eastern Ontario. But for Sherbrooke, it looked like a perfectly blue sky and all around that area, the eastern townships. So we decided that was our destination. That's where we wanted to go. So there's our path. So it was a go for Sherbrooke, 350 kilometers or about a 3.5-hour drive. Not too bad. I've driven way longer than that for some meteor showers. So this was an easy drive, but we decided to leave the day before the eclipse to hopefully to avoid any possible traffic. that could occur. We were concerned that possibly a lot of people from Southern Ontario would want to drive up towards the eastern townships where the weather prospects were the best. So we left early to go there and then to scope out a couple of different spots once we were there to set up our equipment. So on Eclipse Day, we were up in the morning, and after not sleeping so well during the night, I was still stressed about the weather, even though it was not a lot of concern. I was like, oh, okay, are those cirrus clouds going to come in quicker or not? And fortunately, we woke up in the morning, clear blue sky all around us. It was beautiful. So we went towards the front of the property, set up our equipment. So my setup was a Teleview NP101 refractor with a Canon 6D for the close-up shots on the sun. And I had for visual a Lunt 60H Alpha just to do some visual. And Denis Legault, he brought his C8 that he had set up for viewing. And we had a good little crowd. So part of them relatives of Denis, some friends, and a couple of neighbors came out to join us. It was a nice little gathering. So here's a closer view of my setup. And on the right side, you can see Denis' C8 set up there. So with the Eclipse well underway, here's my number 14 welder's glass, the same one that I purchased back in 1994, May 1994, for that partial eclipse in Ottawa. Same welder's glass that I brought for this eclipse 30 years later, and works great for just for looking. If I get tired of the glasses on me, and just pull that out. The works quite nicely. Well, as the eclipse goes on, here's Denis demonstrating the pinhole technique using projecting crescent suns on the surface. So we could actually see hundreds of those crescent suns, and it's kind of fun to look at the shadow of a tree or a sign on the street or something that projects little holes, and you can see literally hundreds and hundreds of these crescent suns on the ground all over the place. It's really kind of cool what happens during an eclipse, how things start to change. It's not just the eclipse itself, but the environment around you, what's happening. There's a lot that can happen in a short period of time too. So we're getting close to the second contact or totality. So the anticipation is building quite a bit. The other big thing that happens deep into the partial is the drop in temperature. Like the temperature drops several degrees. Unfortunately, I didn't measure it, but we were warm. It was over 25 degrees, t-shirt weather. A number of minutes before totality, it got really cool. Like we were running for sweatshirts and jackets because you had the chill. It was getting really quite cold. And the other thing that struck me is how quickly Venus became into view in the deepening blue sky. It just popped right out below the sun. The other thing I noticed that's kind of interesting are the shadows. How shadows cast on the ground start to really take a different shape as the sun becomes a thin crescent. So what happens is, if you notice, typically a shadow is kind of fuzzy all around. But look at some of the edges from my shadow. Some of the edges are sharp, others are fuzzy. So the sharp edges, I believe, are the parts that are lined up with the crescent sun, and they just become into more focus. So just kind of interesting how you see that change, and around you, you look at the lighting, and it's kind of like the light has a polarized look to it, almost like you have your sunglasses on, but you don't. It's kind of a really cool effect. And totality starts. I always love to hear the reactions that people have. So it just started, and you're just it's breathtaking what you see, how quickly it's like someone just puts the dimmer down and the sky turns dark. You start to see more stars in the sky. Jupiter is visible up on the left side. The corona is bursting into view. It's incredible, incredible. So here I'm going to go through some of my shots, my close-up shots with the refractor. I was using a Canon 6D, and with the refractor, it gave a focal length of 540 millimeter at f5.4. And the camera was basically hands-off. So I was using a computer. So the camera was hooked up to a computer running the Solar Eclipse Maestro. And the only purpose being that it was controlling, it was doing all the exposures automatically from a predetermined script that I tweaked, I modified. I decided all the exposures I wanted well ahead of time. I tested it many times at home to make sure that it worked. And then it was hands-off. The whole eclipse was basically controlled by the computer running the exposures on the camera. It worked actually superbly well. And that the big reason for that is that you only have about 3.5 minutes, where we were almost 3.5 minutes of totality. So you want to, it goes fast. You want to try to make the most out of that time and not hopefully futz with equipment the least possible, so you can enjoy the show and take it in. So just seconds later, here's an exposure that was optimized for the last little Bailey's beads on the upper left side, just mere seconds as totality is about to start. And you can really see some of the nice prominence on the top left side of the sun and around 9 o'clock. There's some good ones there. And they were nice and bright. And here's my composite of 5 different exposures at totality. So those were blended together. And my aim here was to process just enough to really get a sense of what I saw with my binoculars when looking at the corona. This is pretty close to what I was looking at visually. The camera also did a deep exposure at mid-totality to capture some of the earth shine. The earth shine on the moon. You can see a little bit of the details there. That part we can't see visually, but the camera caught it nicely. And you notice some of the prominence visible here. The one at 5 o'clock, that was a huge one. It was really very bright, intense pink red to the naked eye. You couldn't miss it. It was one of the most brilliant point of color that I've ever seen. It was just incredible how bright that prominence was, just to the naked eye without any optical aid. And here we are right before third contact, so right before the end of totality. And you have some good details on that huge prominence near the bottom. And there's a really nice one at 3 o'clock as well, just near moments before the sun reappears. So we have Bailey's beads happening on the other side. Diamond ring, yeah, it starts with Bailey's beads, and then it just bursts into the bright flash, just a dazzling diamond ring, really spectacular. So now I'm just going to go back to that totality shot. This is the full frame image. The sun is not centered, and I was having problems with my mount. Was not tracking well. I was having issues with the equipment. I think the gears were slipping or something was going on with my mount. But it turns out it was a blessing that it happened, because had the sun been perfectly centered, I wouldn't have caught this unusual object that crept up on the bottom left side. It's a little object, very faint. This is comet SOHO 5008, a sun-grazing comet. Had no idea it was there, because it was discovered. This comet was discovered only right before the eclipse through one of the SOHO images. And the comet was destroyed mere moments after the eclipse, sometime after the eclipse, I think a couple hours following. It plunged into the sun, or too close to it, it disappeared completely. It broke apart. So it's just a short visibility, but I was super lucky to catch it just by pure luck. There's a close-up of that part. You can see there's a little bit of a tail visible to it. So I was very lucky to see them. Observations of sun-grazing comets are from the ground at least, are extremely rare. The only way you can see them is during a total eclipse. And otherwise, you have to be in space to see those things. So now we got another video coming up. This is a time lapse setup of the site, and you can see right as totality starts, everything darkens. And that twilight looks like it goes all the way around you. It's like a twilight 360 degrees around you, basically. Really neat. And after almost 3.5 minutes, it's done. So we're back into the normal sunlight and the warming temperature. So the next video I'm going to try, I can't promise that it's going to work very well. Visually, we could see them. It was obvious, but it's something that's kind of difficult to capture on video because it's subtle. It's called the shadow bands. So what this is, it's shadow bands are phenomena that for a number of years we didn't really understood the mechanics or what causes it, but it's now thought to be a refraction phenomena that's kind of similar, more or less, to the twinkling of stars. So as the eclipse is just finishing or just starting or just before it starts, you have the tiniest crescent sun. It causes a refraction phenomena through the atmosphere, through the different layers of air. And then on the ground, on lighter surfaces of the ground, you can see these waves. These, you call them shadow waves because they look like shadows that are rapidly moving in waves away from you. Really kind of cool when you see them. It only lasts for a few seconds, very fleeting. Quite often we don't think to look for them because we're at awe from the eclipse. It just finishes, and by the time the shadow bands are there and gone, it's easy to miss. Let's try the video and see if it works. That's a little bit hard to see. I would see if Chris, if you're able to pull in the original, the full-size QuickTime file, you might have a better look. But it might be still tough to see on this screen, or for those of you online, but we can give it a shot.
Sorry, just a moment.
Yeah, no problem. Just curious if anyone has ever seen the shadow bands from previous eclipses. Yeah, yeah, oh, cool. Yeah, they're fun to watch. Yeah, we see a little bit there. You see, it's kind of like shimmering all over the street. It's like right after the totality ended, and lasted a few moments, a few seconds, and it was done. So I said you were able to see them a little better on this version. Yeah, if you look closely. No, that's real time. That's exactly, and visually, it was obvious, like you couldn't miss it. It's like, oh, what the heck's going on there? It's thought to be a refraction of the light from the very thin crescent sun, because it's such a focus or a small point of light that's very intense in the sky, that it'll distort through the atmosphere, through different layers of air, and cause the wavy patterns on the ground, sort of like similar to twinkling of stars up here. You're welcome. So the next one is all my shots from the very beginning of the eclipse all the way to the end. Time-lapse video every minute. Only at near the very end of the partial phase, we started getting a first few wisps of the cirrus clouds, but otherwise we were good right up to the end. And then after that, it started clouding over. So we were able to really dodge the clouds nicely. And the next one. Whoops. Let me go back. Okay, there we go. So here, two images, the one on the left, obviously at totality, the one on the right, immediately after the third contact. And you can really see the difference, how much darker it got. Like during totality, it doesn't get full dark like nighttime, but it's like a deep twilight. And you see that horizon with that nice color, that nice sort of like twilight effect all the way around you, which is really striking. But it's still dark enough for the streetlights to come on. So it's a good difference. And then the birds are singing. They think it's morning or evening. They get confused. So really quite interesting to see. And then they all get quiet. Yes. So here is just comparing my two totality images from the eclipse in 2017 with the one in 2024. Just look how different the corona looks. Big difference. What I found is with this latest eclipse, the corona was, it just looked very, I guess, very disorganized, very chaotic to me compared to the one in 2017. And part of the reason for that is in 2017, we were approaching solar minimum. So there was much less solar activity. Things were much more stable on the sun. There was less CMEs or less flares, less going on compared to this time where the corona in 2024 was much brighter, but more circular, more disorganized, I guess is the way to put it. And also there was more bright prominence with this eclipse, especially the one towards the bottom. That to me was the highlight of the show. So all in all, it was a very successful trip. No words or pictures can match the thrill and wonder of witnessing totality. It truly is one of nature's grandest displays. I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Don't disappear. Any questions for Pierre? Anyone online, Chris? Sorry.
That's a very good point, Simon. So
Done. We're done. We cannot hear the question.
Yes, turn it on. Well, it's not a question, it's a comment. And that was on Pierre's 2017 image, when the sun was relatively magnetically quiet. You could clearly see in the corona, you could clearly see the major magnetic dipole of the sun. And as you were saying, that this year in the image on the right, it looked more chaotic because the sun was more magnetically active at the time that the image was taken. And I think his explanation really stands out in those two images.
that's a very good comment. Good point there, Simon. Thank you.
Any other question?
Yeah, sure.
What's your name? Oh, there's the mic.
Okay, so what's your name?
It's Pierre.
Pierre. I do want to sync up with you after this. I watched this eclipse from less than 2 hours away in Maine, and I drove all the way up from DC
Oh,
to Maine to
great.
catch it. So it was a very similar experience right over the border. It's awesome.
It is awesome. It's definitely one of the top 3 things that I've seen. I guess the solar eclipses and 2001 Leonid storm would be right up there. So yeah, it's nice when we get to it's really nice when we get the weather to cooperate where the way that it did. This time, the weather was highly favoring Texas and the southwest of the continent, but it was kind of a reversal where all the big bubble of clear skies was into the northeast, and the southwest was very iffy, very cloudy. I know some of you who went down to Mexico or to the States, it turned out to be not as bad, and it kind of cleared up a little more, but it was pretty iffy for a while there.
I have
Another
a
question?
question for everyone. Like, if you're on the path of totality, but close to the edge of the path of totality, would the twilight be like brighter on one side than the other side, or it would be the same all around you? That's a hypothetical question. Like,
Yeah, it's a good question. I would think that one part of the sky would be a lot brighter than the other part.
yeah,
Similarly to when totality is just starting or when it's right about to end. What I found, I didn't mention that during the presentation, but I noticed that a whole part of the sky was getting very bright. I could see, almost like I could see that coming in, speeding in, and I looked behind me, it was dark blue. And then suddenly the sun burst into view.
yes.
So I think during, if you would be right on the edge of totality or just within, you wouldn't get quite as dark as you would deep into the path, but you would get like part of the sky dark and the other one lighter.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
All righty, any other questions? Yes, coming down. Without falling down, where are we?
Hi. It's on a different scope, but I went to this, I was in Ottawa and I went to the sailing club and I was very fortunate, nobody was there. And I sat there and what I observed was the birds who before they were all distant chirping away in the trees. But it was very, very interesting that the birds all came over to the tree that was close to me. They all gathered over me and it's like they were saying, what's going on? Like, that's what did anybody else experience? And also I had a groundhog that came to me. Like, it was weird. I sat still, right? I sat really still for a good half an hour. And when it happened and birds came over and then as soon as it was over, they all left.
Yeah, they definitely react. In our case, there was one bird that was close by and it was making a lot of noise and racket during the eclipse.
Yeah.
And then after it finished, it was all quiet again.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, that's all.
Thanks. Any more? Okay, I would like to point out the sort of wildlife and animal focus we had. What was it? The June meeting, the Eclipse chicken that was being held up and observing the ongoing events. Now we've got groundhogs and everything else. Okay, Pierre, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All righty, so we're at the break and I'm about to lose that. So just a reminder, the conveniences are open, but the rest of the museum is closed. There are no door prizes, so don't read that second part of that. Your trivia question for the next 10 minutes. A parsec is a unit of measuring distances, interstellar and intergalactic distances. Each parsec is about 3.26 light years in length. What would our definition of the parsec be and how long would it be if we were living on Mars? That is your question. So you can have 10 minutes. We're doing well for time and see you after the break. Welcome back. So what distance would be covered by a parsec if it was being measured from Mars? I've had a couple of answers so far, neither of which agree with my arithmetic, but let's have a look at it. If you don't know, the definition of a parsec is based on a triangle that spans the orbit of the Earth. That average distance is known as an astronomical unit. So the base of that triangle is 2 astronomical units wide. And so the little pointy apex where the star is, that's the parallax angle. The slight shift in the star from one side of the orbit to the other. So Mars's orbit is 1.52 times as wide as Earth's, 1.52 times the astronomical unit, or 1.52 times the base. And so my arithmetic said it's 4.995. We might as well call it 5 rather than 6 astronomical units. What'd you? Oh, that's reassuring. Okay, thank you. Okay, so introduction to Astronomy 101. Okay, Bojan. Please account for yourself. So, things to make and do on cloudy nights.
Not the form.
No.
On cloudy nights, you can just argue with people usually. That's what it revolves down to. Yeah, so my name is Bojan, and this presentation is just going to be about some things I've done in the past year that are DIY projects. Usually we talk a lot about megapixels, bandpass, lenses, all that stuff. This is going to be purely mechanical and none of the other stuff. So why DIY projects? Why DIY projects? What drove this? Project one's going to be a Dobsonian mount made from scratch. The next one's going to be a rolling platform for an equatorial mount that I have. All sky cameras 1 and 2, and then a Telrad riser. So why do we do DIY projects? They're difficult. They're really frustrating once you get down into it. Sometimes they're actually more expensive by the time you buy the tools and everything. And they take a lot of time. So actually, they're fun. You get to learn how your commercial gear works. Because you're building these things from scratch, you can actually tune it to your own specifications. And if you're making a mount, for example, you can adjust the height and build it just so that it's the perfect height for you. So when you're sitting in a chair, you can be perfectly comfortable. You're not craning your neck. You're not hunched over this thing. It can be the exact height that you want it to be. So what drove all this? We've all heard this question from friends. What telescope should I buy? Cost no object. And after doing this for 15, 20 years, the best telescope's really the one you can get and the one that you use often. If you buy a 15-inch Dob, 25-inch Dob, and it weighs 300 pounds and you never take it out because you're lazy or it's too heavy, that telescope's useless. So how could I make my existing gear more accessible was my mindset throughout this whole project. So the Dobsonian mount. So on the right-hand side there, that is a 12-inch f4 imaging Newtonian. It weighs 60 pounds. And it sits on an EQ8 mount, which alone is like 130, 140 pounds with the counterweights. So this thing's incredibly impractical. I don't like taking it out because the whole thing weighs 250 pounds and it's just not enjoyable to use. So since I used that right scope for night vision work, and if you remember from my previous talk, I do night vision using focal reduction of the night vision device. So I do very low magnification. So when I build my Dobsonian mount, it doesn't need to be like the most precise, stable thing ever, because if I'm only working at like 40x, 50x, I can just build a mount that's good enough. It doesn't have to be perfect. So the 12-inch scope is actually f4. And with a focal reduction, I'm working at like 20 to 30 power. And therefore, I can be a bit looser with my measurements. I don't do any photography, so it doesn't need to track. So this is just going to be one mechanical thing that holds my 60 pounds of telescope. So what will you need? There's a nice store here in Ottawa. They sell Baltic birch. So this is a type of tree, I guess, whose wood is nice and stiff. Thanks, Mick. Wood is stiff. You heard it here. So it's an 18mm thick piece of plywood. That is the thickest piece of plywood that they sell. And you want that so that it's nice and rigid, such that when you put 60 pounds on it, it doesn't flex and move. A 4x8 sheet is about 150 bucks. Cute story. I showed up there with my Mazda 3, optimistically thinking, hey, what if you cut it in half? And then I'm like, no, like 4 feet across still doesn't fit in the Mazda 3. So there was some nice gentleman with a pickup truck. And I'm like, how would you like to do a good deed? And he took the sheet of plywood home for me in one piece. And then he came over to Astro Day at the end of the day. So it was a nice story that day. You'll need a router and a jig. So that's technical speak for making circles in wood. Clamps, screws, wood glue, that type of stuff. There's a website stellafane.org. From there, you can buy the actual Teflon bearings. They're already cut to size and pre-drilled, and laminate. So think kitchen counter laminate that's been specifically chosen for its ability to slide well over Teflon. And a calculator. You'll need that. So how does it begin? It starts virtually, and Sky at Night magazine has this calculator online. What you do is you load up your telescope with the heaviest eyepieces that you're going to use, all the accessories, finder scopes or whatever, and then you balance it on a broom. So you put the broom down on the floor, you put the telescope perpendicular across it like this until you get it to balance, and then that's your balance point for your telescope. And then you enter in all the numbers into this calculator. So the tube diameter, the dovetail thickness, the plywood thickness, you enter all that information in this yellow row, and then it spits out the results at the bottom. So basically from the measurements on the previous page, it actually tells you exactly how big of a circle to cut, how big of, or how wide your base will be. And this was the cool part because I am 6 foot tall. I was like, okay, I want this telescope to be at about 5 feet tall with the eyepiece. So I just fudged with the numbers until I got a plan that works so that the scope would be at my height. So this was December last year. So winter still outside. That's the 4x8 sheet of plywood. And basically you just start cutting and making circles. This router thing is very fun to use. Tip I have, or I learned, when you're using it, you have to push out away from the center of the circle. Otherwise, your circle will be uneven and your bearing won't perform very well. I don't have any woodworking experience, but I just found one of these routers on Kijiji and started making some circles, and I think it turned out okay. Once you are done cutting, you're left with the base, and then this is a attitude bearing, so for the telescope going up, down, and you use some glue and screws to basically put the box together like that.
What's the watt rate?
Good question. That is the tube rings of the 12-inch Newtonian scope. I forgot to mention that. If you think about the telescope, it's got the tube rings. You need to make dovetails for it. So you need to buy some wood to make a spacer such that when your scope is swinging through the actual mount, the scope doesn't hit the mount. So you need to expand the size of, or the width of your scope a bit so that you can swing through the base of the mount. So once you assemble everything, that's what it looks like. And it kind of looks weird, like the bearings are just full circles and you really don't need a full circle, because once you draw it out, you realize that when the scope goes from horizontal to vertical, you only need about half the circle. So I ended up cutting off half the circle to make it look better and added some very rough handles inside of the altitude or attitude bearings such that you can more easily lift the scope. I am terrible at staining things. I did not read the instructions. I did this in the midst of winter. I read the instructions like it needs to be 25 degrees. I'm like, this sucks. It's cold outside. I did it in the basement with like a respirator, and within 5 minutes, my partner came downstairs. She's like, the whole house smells like stain. What the hell are you doing? I'm like, I'm sorry. I got carried away. I wanted to finish this project. So it looks terrible, but it works really well. So yep, happily engaged, actually, yes. So here at the leading edge of the attitude bearing, or right here, you have those laminate strips that you got online, and you literally just use wood glue and glue them on. That's about all you do. And that's what it looks like once it's done. These are the Teflon bearings that you just screw in, just 4 of them. And then at the base, I bought 4 hockey pucks because why not? And I just screwed the hockey pucks into the base. You put some Teflon pads on top of that base, and then you sacrifice an old LP, which people tell me people used to play music with these things. I'm not sure, actually. So a friend gave me an old LP that sits on the Teflon, and then your whole base sits on that, and you have a like lazy Susan type thing that moves your telescope around. Can I click play here? And this is once it's all done. So this is with the whole night vision stack, filter wheel, many filters. And as you can see, it's very smooth, up, down, left, right on the Lazy Susan and the LP. It stays in place when you let go, and it moves very easily with one hand. So the mount was a success. This is what it looks like outside. If you notice at the bottom, yep. The whole point of this was to make my kit more accessible. To make it more accessible, I bought a moving dolly. So it's a dolly that's like a square like this, and then it expands into a square like this, and you can move your fridge with it, or you can move like a dishwasher or whatever, and it collapses to that size. And then I just put the whole telescope on the dolly, and now it's got wheels and just rolls out of my garage when I need to use it. That was $30 on Amazon, so it was trivial. Okay, so things I learned on this project, make sure to push perpendicular on the router, as I mentioned. So you're going in a circle, make sure to push consistently in the same direction to get that smooth surface on the attitude bearing. Measure twice. There was a couple bad cuts and made for expensive firewood. Sometimes there isn't enough friction in the attitude bearings because you end up adding lighter or heavier eyepieces. So I was just on Facebook Marketplace and I discovered these things called, I think they're weight mates, they're called. It's a 2-pound weight with a magnet, and people use it in weightlifting if you want to add just 2 pounds to what you're weightlifting. My tube is made of metal, so the thing just sticks to that. And then as I add eyepieces or remove eyepieces, you just drag the magnet up and down and you get perfect balance at all times. And you don't have to actually rebalance the scope ever, which works into the whole making it as accessible and as simple as possible. Because I find anything that complicates the viewing experience just makes me want to go back inside. So making it as simple as possible was the game. So project 2 was the platform, for lack of a better word. I have a solar setup with a 130 mil refractor and a 90 mil H alpha scope. Together, those are like 60 pounds without a mount. And then I have the smaller equivalents of those, which are like the 80 mil scope and the 40 mil scope, which weighs like 20 pounds. The problem is it really annoys me that I have the big setup that I can't use easily, so I always revert to the small setup. So I wanted to figure out how could I use my big setup without compromising on the views. It had to be easy to use. Again, that's my reiteration with the night vision and like the previous project. Astronomy needs to be as accessible as possible for me. That makes it enjoyable. So the solar setups, the 90 mil double stack Meade scope, and then 130 mil plus Herschel wedge plus bino viewers. That's 55 pounds. And that's what it looks like when it's on a manual mount, but even that's not enjoyable to like lift. You've all been in astronomy long enough. An equatorial mount, or this LTAS one, is just awkward to grab. You like pinch your finger every once in a while. It just sucks. So this decision triangle that I made up is what I was trying to balance. If you want good views and it's big and heavy, then it's probably expensive. And if it's expensive and big and heavy, then you probably get good views. And I didn't want to compromise on any of this. I wanted the whole triangle. So this is where the platform came through. So the rolling platform, I saw people were making dollies. So I needed something with at least 55 pounds of visual capacity. But I'm like, whether I roll around 100 pounds or 200 pounds or 300 pounds, I guess it doesn't really matter. Like if it's just on wheels, you can just push it around and the weight shouldn't make that much of a difference. So I went on the local forums and I found some guy selling an EQ8 with a dolly already built. And I'm like, great, payload of 110 pounds. It can hold my solar setup. And is it easy to use? Absolutely not. The whole mount is just 200 pounds. And you're probably thinking, like, what's this guy up to? Like, why would you buy a 200-pound mount if you're trying to go for ease of use? But trust me, it works out. So it holds the solar setup, but it also left me 60 pounds of payload to use for something else. So when I bought the mount from the guy, this was already the platform. So it's literally 3 2x4s, a sheet of plywood, and 3 wheels screwed into it. So nothing sophisticated. The wheels do have locking mechanisms so that once you roll to your position, you lock the wheels and your thing doesn't go elsewhere. And that's the mount with the Pierre. So I immediately made an adjustment to it. The guy I bought it from, he was rolling it on a horizontal surface. I don't have a horizontal surface. I have a driveway. So I used these ratchet straps, a single ratchet strap, and then one of these D-rings in each corner. And then I ran the ratchet strap over everything. And now the ratchet straps hold everything together. And the Pierre and the dolly are one, if you will. I also wanted a handle on the thing, and I went to Home Depot. I'm like, how do you make a handle that like moves in all directions? The Home Depot folks, they have a name for us. They call us MacGyver. They like sort of like snort. They're like, hey, this guy, and then they walk around you with you for like 20 minutes trying to find your part. Turns out I just took a wheel, a caster wheel. I took out the wheel. I drilled a hole through the handle, and then you get all the degrees of motion that you would get from a wheel. So up, down, and in a circle. So there's the handle. There's me pulling the dolly, and here's the upgrade. So that's almost 80 pounds of scope with 80 pounds of counterweights, and you can push it around quite easily because it's on wheels. But there was problems. The wheels were rigid, which means as I go down my driveway with bumps, I would feel the whole telescope shake and I would cringe. I'm like, is something going to break? It just did not feel great. It's a lot of weight moving through these ruts on my driveway. I could pave my driveway, I guess, but I didn't think of that. Balance, obviously, you get to your final destination with your dolly, but you don't have a flat surface. You have that much weight on the mount, so you're stressing the mount because your mount's not balanced properly. So I needed a way to balance it. And we haven't even talked about ice or snow yet either. So I wanted to solve all these problems. So what's needed to fix that? I needed at least new wheels, and I needed a way to level the almost 300 pounds that this thing now weighs with all the gear on it. So step one was buy new wheels, and that was trivial. You go online. If you decide to do this, I recommend you buy the biggest wheels you can practically use. These are 8-inch pneumatic wheels. Pneumatic just means there's air in them, so you can deflate them. You can inflate them as well. And that helps when you're going over the ruts in the driveway because the rubber and the air absorb some of that shock. So new wheels, pneumatic, rotation locks. So the wheels have locks on them so that they also stop rolling once you get to where you're going. The leveling system, I was just browsing cloudy nights and I found that people had done this before. So the thing here, what's this called? A screw mount nut. It is a beefy, like 5/8 11 threaded thing. It's like a piece of stainless steel this big. I bought 6 of those, so 3 for the top, 3 for the bottom. And then I bought the threaded rod that goes with that. And then at the bottom is a leveling foot used for like industrial sized shelving units. And if you can imagine it, I guess I should have brought it, but it's a foot and the middle of the foot rotates. So as the threaded rod comes in and rotates, the foot gets jammed into the ground and the threaded rod takes all the force. So I'll show how that works in the next, is it here? So this is what the setup looks like. You see the threaded rods in the 3 corners. It's actually sitting on those feet. So I've leveled the whole mount. And because I had so much extra capacity, I'm like, let's have some fun with this. So this is actually a C11, which, yeah, this started as like a practical project. It snowballed into like, just what can I do? This is a 90 mil scope, which is moderately sized, and that's 130 on the left. So total payload now with the bino viewers is almost 100 pounds. So I need to make sure this thing levels properly to not destroy the mount. And that's what it looks like now. And I think I have a video. Now remember I said if it's not practical, I'm not going to use it. So I use some thread lock on those top bits there. You like wedge that nuts in place, and then I can just use a drill to level the whole thing. So even though the thing is 300 pounds, it rolls down my driveway on its own almost because it sometimes gets away from me. But once it gets to the end there, it stands still. And then I just have a drill dedicated to it and I can just drill and it levels. And that's my no compromise approach to this thing. So I can do solar astronomy within 5 minutes as long as it takes me to roll down the driveway and level it. And this is okay, so that was the mechanical projects. Now this one's a bit more virtual. So I built 2 all-sky cameras. For those who haven't heard that term, it's basically building a camera that does astronomy for you 24/7. You mount it on your roof, you configure it, and then it just takes pictures 24/7 during the day, during the night, and then in the morning, it actually creates a time lapse of the previous day. And then you can just program it to send those video files somewhere. So I have them on a file share at home. So every morning I wake up and I can look at a video of the previous night and look at the sky that I missed because I was asleep, basically. So why? It was fun. It was moderately cheap-ish. So easy to do. And I had some gear lying around, so I wanted to try it. This one was surprising to me. I didn't expect this feature of this project, but when you go outside, you can't see some of the higher wispy clouds that would interrupt your astronomy. But because the camera is more sensitive, you can actually see the clouds much better. So instead of walking outside to look up at the sky, I can check on my phone and I know that it's clear above my house better than if I could just walk outside. This one's cool. It lets you see things while you're asleep. That's part of the whole making astronomy accessible thing. And you set it and forget it. So what will you need? You'll need a camera. Any ZWO camera that you can find online will work. I found this one used locally, so I picked that one up. You need a Raspberry Pi. Those are like those small computer, cell phone sized computers like this. You need the computer to control the camera, so you need to basically mount that computer with the camera wherever you're putting the camera. You need an acrylic dome off Amazon, 25 bucks, an Ethernet cable to run to the Raspberry Pi. I don't like Wi-Fi. It sometimes cuts out. This makes sure that you're always connected to your thing. You need to power that Raspberry Pi through power over Ethernet. And I decided to just run power for this project because it was at home and it was easier to do because I couldn't get enough power out of the power over Ethernet because you need also a heat source, and I'll cover why you need a heat source in a bit. So Amazon project box, 30 bucks, you get some scrap wood, and I built this little shelf for the camera in the project box. The thing I'm holding is the Raspberry Pi, so that goes in the box with it. It looks like a tangled mess, and that's because it is. If you see at the bottom, there's these orange beads. Those are like silica humidity absorption things. The reason is if you get a leak or something, the inside of your box would get very humid, your dome would fog up, and then you wouldn't see anything. So I just dumped in some silica little beads in there to pick up any extra humidity. And then this thing here is part of a home automation thing I have. So it's like your wireless, your light switches that you can turn on remotely. However, into that, I have plugged in a, do I have a picture? No. So this is what it looks like when it's closed. I mentioned the heat source. Again, when it's -20 outside, your dome will end up getting so cold, you will fog up your dome, and then you won't see anything with your all-sky camera. So because I had so much space to work with, I bought a dew heater for like an eyepiece. I plugged that into the automatic light switch, and I wrapped the camera in the dew heater. And then I have a little script that runs on the Raspberry Pi, and if it's cold outside, I just auto cycle on the dew heater, and then it turns off at a certain threshold. So that's how I control dew. This is a very heavy solution, as in I'm using a 30-watt heater to get rid of the dew, but it was easy. I just wanted to get the project done, so that's how it works. So what can you see? May 10th, my phone was blowing up in the morning. Everyone knows I'm the resident astronomer in our group, and they're like, "Did you catch the aurora last night?" I'm like, "No, I was asleep. It was really cloudy where I am. So even though I live near Carleton University, which is not a dark sky, the camera plus the exposure plus being on the roof and looking straight up means you can see the clouds like I mentioned, but you can also catch aurora when they occur. It takes a picture every 20, or it exposes for 20 seconds and then starts another picture immediately. And then this video I compressed like 2 hours into the 30 seconds or 40 seconds. Yeah, so I'm asleep while this is happening. I didn't interact with it. I didn't do anything. I just woke up in the morning and there was a video on my phone of last night's sky, and you get to see satellites, you get to see comets, all that stuff. It's pretty cool. So this is actually a 2-for-1 project. So there is a small antenna here. I don't know if you can see it, but basically you buy a software-defined radio. It's like $40 on Amazon. You plug it into the Raspberry Pi, and then that antenna is actually picking up signals that are being transponded by airplanes. So airplanes are constantly squawking their location. This picks up those signals and then sends it to flightradar.com, which is like a website. And then you crowdsource, you become part of their sensor network, and then gave you a business subscription. So I'm using that box as just putting another antenna on the roof, basically. It looks horrible. I have a supportive partner. This sits on the roof, so no one has to see it, but it works. It hasn't leaked yet. It's been up there for like 8 months now, so it's going strong. I'm working on another one for the cottage. I'm trying to make this one as small as possible because I can't run power to this one, so I can't run a 40-watt heater in there. So I'm hoping that with the software-defined radio that I bought for it, which is this thing, and the small enclosure that I will probably put some insulation in, I can run the Raspberry Pi CPU and GPU at like 100% when it's cold, and hopefully that heat will be enough inside of the project box to actually heat the whole thing. This one still hasn't gone up in a tree yet. I'm working on how to get up in the tree. That's actually a difficult problem. And the last thing is perhaps the least interesting thing. It's a Telrad riser. So if you've ever used a Telrad, you stick it on your scope, and then it's almost like perfectly parallel with your scope, and then you have to crane your neck really close like this, and it's just not enjoyable. So this Telrad riser is a 30-cent part. If you have a 3D printer, the plans are available online. My friends have 3D printers, so I just gave them the link. I'm like, hey, could you print this, please? And they came to work the next day and they just gave me the part. So the whole Telrad riser is this 3D printed piece. Your Telrad sits into it. It fits into your shoe dovetail thing here, and it raises your Telrad by 4 inches or however much you want. And it's a great way to keep your neck protected. And you can see also here are the counterweights, the ones that were like $10 on Marketplace, and they're with magnets, so you can just slide them up and down. So that's all I wanted to cover. These are fun projects that you can do, some of them more expensive than others, but when it's cloudy here in Ottawa, like it is a lot of the time, you can improve upon some of your gear without actually doing any astronomy. So yeah, any questions?
Any questions?
Thanks. Just a quick question about your drill. Is that a regular handheld drill, or is that an impact driver drill to handle that kind of weight?
Yeah, good question. It's a cheap Ryobi regular drill. When I tried to use the impact drill, it ended up breaking the Loctite on the threads. So I had to revert back to the normal drill and use better Loctite.
All right. Thanks.
Anyone else? All righty. That reminded me of the session we had, what, 2-3 years ago, where there was a succession of people did their homemade hacks for various handy bits of hardware. Maybe we need to do these more often. Observation reports. I will start with the ones that got missed because of our technical issues, starting with Hugo Lama's crowd reaction to the eclipse.
How many seconds are there?
Look at it go. There it is.
Look at it. It's just a straight line.
Look outside too, Lily. Whoa. It's like it's dark. It's nighttime. Whoa. Woo. Wow.
As Pierre said, a truly awesome and primal event. If you haven't seen totality, crawl across broken glass, but get to see it. Sorry? Say again? Oh, good on you. And again, Hugo, sorry about all the delays.
What location was it?
That was down near the Cornwall on the river. Yes, thank you. Okay, now we have Andrea's mega super duper eclipse video.
This is the craziest looking sunspot I have ever seen.
It's moving. You can see it moving. Take a video of it. Oh, look at the eyes should be Seriously. That's the ISS traveling through the aurora.
You can see the sparks coming off it. You can. I'm sure. The side cells are all shorted out now. I think so. Yeah. Doing it all the time. These are awesome. I thought Andrea was mad when she was seeing the aurora. Yeah.
And so that's why everybody is encouraged to go to the RASC Ottawa star parties out at Carb, because Katie guarantees to turn that on every month. So thank you for me, Katie. Finally, we've got Paul's own Mega Uber Bonza Aurora video. He can't be with us now because he's still up in Northern Ontario, and they should have played last month, but he's still up in Northern Ontario, so it still applies. So.
Good evening, everyone. I hope many of you got a chance to view the grand auroral display that we had on the night of May the 10th. I can't be with you in person tonight as I'm currently up in Northern Ontario, so I thought I'd share some of what I saw that night in this short video presentation. I know that some of the areas to the east, north, and south of Ottawa were periodically dogged by clouds, but to the west, we were fortunate enough to get a solid clearing starting around 11 p.m. and lasting through dawn. I had 3 cameras rolling for this event, but for tonight, I'm only showing some of the views captured with my Canon 1000D DSLR and a Bauer 8mm fisheye lens. This configuration provided a wonderful view of 118 degrees in width, and from the ground, almost up to the zenith, so capturing about 1/3 of the entire sky. Tonight's time-lapse combines 733 images taken over a 4-hour period from about 1 to 5 o'clock in the morning, and captures 2 amazing outbursts occurring around 2:45 to 3:30 a.m. This was a truly remarkable light show, and the most intense auroral display I'd seen since the very potent auroral storm of November the 8th, 2004. Enjoy, and have a great weekend, everyone.
Thank you, Paul. Alrighty, is Rick here? Hello, Rick. Come on down. Let's go back laser.
Okay. Good evening, all. We've actually started beginning to hear about T. Corbor in the news on the regular media. So I heard there's an astronomy camp coming up. Some little girl got a telescope, so she's going to take it out. She's going to watch this go off in the next 2 weeks, maybe in the next few months. So there's the star in the center. About 10.3 magnitude, still about 10.3 magnitude, been about 10.3 magnitude for about a year now. So I've been watching it. These are V observations. So this is the photometric green filter. And you can see it is actually going up and down. in a periodic thing. This is actually, I think, the orbit. This is what this star is a white dwarf orbiting around a regular star, and it's actually sucking material off the normal star. And the material builds up on top of the white dwarf until it gets deep enough and hot enough that it ignites in a thermonuclear reaction and explodes and brightens the star up dramatically. So this is the orbital activity. You can see I've got one observation there that's clearly wrong. I have since gone back and corrected that. And I also take measurements through a B filter. This is a blue filter, photometric, and you can see the amplitude is higher. What that tells us, for instance, is that the temperature is also changing as this happens. Also another wrong observation. And if you look at them together, you can see that they're going along quite nicely together, but definitely more amplitude in the blue. So when I take these observations, I take like 10 images, 5 blue, 5 V, or 8 blue and 8 V. And then in the morning, I get up and I analyze them all. And sometimes it's the next morning or the morning after that. So if this thing's going to explode, I want to be the first person to see it. So what I also do is I go out at night with a telescope and I actually look through an eyepiece and do an estimate of the, now there's 5 observations there. You can see the little downward triangles. Those are called fainter than observations. So those are where I've looked, like for instance, with a pair of binoculars or even just naked eye, and I look at the faintest star I can see, and I know that T Corbour is fainter than that. So I can say, for instance, well, with a small pair of binoculars, I could say that one night that the T Corbour was fainter than 6.5 magnitude, which means it hasn't gone into outburst yet. So everybody can relax, or well, everybody can stay tense because they have to still look. But the other diamond-shaped observations are those that that I've taken, and you can see a bit of scatter. And if we mix them in with my V photometric, yeah, you can see that there's some sort of picking out the curve. It's a very difficult star to observe visually because normally when you do a visual observation, you find a star that's slightly brighter and a star that's slightly fainter. And then you estimate where your target star lies in brightness between those two. Unfortunately for this star, the only 2 comparison stars right now are 9.8 and 10.8. So it's a whole magnitude range and you're trying to estimate in the middle there. And so it's very difficult to get any sort of accuracy. So this is the chart that I use. You can see the 4.2 down there. That's a 4.2 magnitude star. That's one of the visible stars in Corona Borealis. The variable is marked with a little circle and crosshairs, and then the comparison stars I'm using are the numbered ones, and it's always sort of 10.8, 9.8, and so forth. And you can pick up a chart like this for free. You go to the avso.org and their variable star plotter, put in the name of the star. You want a visual chart. The easiest thing to do is choose a predefined chart scale, and then down, it's nice to have, if you're looking through a telescope, you can set it to north down, so it inverts the view like you're looking through a telescope. What else? Not much else on there that you need to worry about. And it occurred to me while I'm going out and looking at this thing every night, and I've got my chart for, you know, sort of 9.8, kind of 10.3 magnitudes, that if I go out and the thing is like bright, I don't have a chart handy, so I quick printed off a chart of brighter stars. So in the upper right there, I may have, no, I don't. So in the upper right there is the circlet of Corona Borealis, and the variable again in the center. So now I've got comparison stars at 4.2, 3.8, 2.2. We expect it's going to max out around 3rd magnitude. So it'll be quite a noticeable star naked eye. So now it means that, and I keep this in the bottom of my Dob mount. So when I'm out there, if I see it's bright, I can just slide it out. I can check my comparison stars and do a measurement. This is a good chart if you're doing binoculars. So it shows sort of down to about 9/10 magnitude. That's all I got. Any questions?
Thank you, Rick.
And I checked a few hours. It's photometrically, but it's take a CCD image and then you draw basically software. Okay, take a CCD image, then you use software that draws a little circle around the star and it measures the total signal within that circle. Then there's also an annulus around that measures the sky brightness, subtracts that from the brightness of the star. And you do that for your target star and then several comparison stars in the field that give you the scale of the whole image sort of. And exactly, yeah.
Any other questions? Okay. Tony. Right. Yeah. Okay. Where's it gone? No, just hit the go button. One more. There you go.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I have a couple of the monthly observations to show you, starting with this little planetary nebula in Aquila. You can see it right there in the middle of the view. My focal length is a little bit short to really do this one justice, but on the plus side, you do get a nice view of this Milky Way star field. You're sort of looking right into the plane of the Milky Way here. And you can see this is about 10 minutes of exposure. Perhaps if I had a little bit more, you can see there's a nice dark nebula on the bottom right. It's a little bit more would bring that out nicely. We zoom in a little bit more, then you can start to see a little bit of color and detail. It looks like kind of a small, faint ring nebula, if you're familiar with that one. I was out at Flow, was this about a month ago, and so I tried to find it in the 18-inch Star Master. And this was right on the edge of what you could see without any filters, but putting in a nebula filter, it was quite apparent. And there's the little sketch I did, picking up some of the stars around as well. That is Planetary Nebula 6781, I think also called the Snow Globe Nebula. Then on the same night, the Dumbbell Nebula doesn't need too much introduction. It's a larger, brighter nebula than the previous one. And yeah, I recommend going to have a look at it. I think you can pick it up in any scope. I think we can even see it from the city sometimes. But with a big aperture and a filter, you can really see why it's called the dumbbell. And in my little sketch, I think I was able to see the structure, not the color, but certainly it's very rewarding to observe. This image on the left was about 30 minutes of exposure, the same focal length as before. So you can kind of see the size comparison. And finally, a little bit of a glamour shot of the North American nebula. This is a big emission nebula just to the side of the Summer Triangle next to Deneb. And this is about 9 hours of exposure. And as a relative narrowband novice, I can only attribute this to beginner's luck. I was quite pleased how it came out. Basically, I just used the standard processing route and threw it all together, and I'm pretty happy with how it came out. So that's all for me. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Tony. Whoops, you had one more there, mate. Yeah. That is attributable to me. Okay. Hello, Doug. Go back laser.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So a couple of aurora pictures. If you can't get out of the city, if you can get away from local light pollution, you can still see the aurora inside the city. About 3 a.m., the clouds were dispersing, and Karen and I went down to Britannia Park out in the West End and stayed there right till dawn. It was amazing how much of the aurora could be seen even as the sky was brightening. That's looking west towards across Britannia Bay towards in the direction of Canada. It was nice seeing the aurora behind the cloud. Inside the city, you might pick up a little bit of green in the photos, but the visually, all the greens with light pollution in the city turn more of a creamy color, but the reds and purples are very visible. That's with a Canon 6D, just on a tripod, ISO 1600 and 15-second exposures for all of them, and an 8mm fisheye lens. Thank you.
Robert. Emerging from the dark. Go back laser.
Okay. This is one of the Virgo cluster galaxies, and it was one of the challenge objects. And this is the same image taken in the new moonlight. As you can see, it's washed out most of the sky. These were not used, by the way, for my final image. And just by coincidence, it was my anniversary, and my wife gave me this card. I think she's confused me with Brian McCullough. Here are some of the labels of that same image of some of the brighter stars. And if we remove the stars using software, we can see 25 galaxies about in there. And if we take it and reverse the galaxies, make it a negative image, they show up even better. So as you can see in that particular Virgo part of the sky, there is a lot of galaxies. This was suggested to me by Mike Wirths. It's a galaxy that he's particularly interested in. And if we zoom in a little closer, you can see that it's definitely an interesting galaxy. I can't even imagine what it made it do this. This is called the Fireworks Galaxy. It's about 25 million light years away. This is the blue snowball, and its name is obvious. If I crop in a little closer, you can definitely see some of the structure of the blue snowball. It's certainly a complicated planetary galaxy, a planetary nebula, I'm sorry. And this was also a challenge object. This is the dumbbell. It's close. It's about 1,300 light years away. And you can see it easily with binoculars. So you should really get out and take a look at it. Anyway, thank you very much.
And Richard. So Richard will be presenting his observations and then walking us into the challenge objects for next month. Go back, laser.
Thank you, Mick. Okay, so this last month, we had the challenge object of looking for the summer triangle. It was just beginning to rise in the east when I was putting together the challenges. And so I took a picture at FLO, and you can see here, well, let's go on to the labeled view anyway. There's the summer triangle. We've got Vega in the constellation Lyra. We've got Deneb at the tail of the swan, Cygnus. And just rising behind the trees there was Altair in the constellation Aquila. Those three stars are quite bright, almost equally bright to each other, so they stand out very nicely in the summer sky, and they will be visible for the rest of the summer and into September, even October sometimes you can see them still. So it's a great summertime constellation, and or asterism, I guess you would call it. And it also sort of highlights some of the other things that are going to be visible during the summer as well. As your next challenge, I also suggested the little constellation of Sagitta, the arrow, and it does definitely look like a little arrow, but it's quite faint. So you do have to get out into dark skies, or you can use binoculars and still see it from the city. And then for lots of fun, there's the other little asterism called the coat hanger here. You can't actually see it on this picture, but if we look a bit closer, and this is just with a zoom lens, a kit lens that came with my M100 Canon camera. So nothing special. You can easily see it in a pair of binoculars. You've got, oops, sorry, back. You've got Sagitta here, the tail of the arrow and the shaft of the arrow here. And then just a little bit above it, you can see this shape of a coat hanger. And that's exactly what it looks like. And the stars are all sort of relatively equal in brightness to each other. They're about 6th magnitude, so only just barely visible to the naked eye, but easily visible in binoculars. And then nearby is the Dumbbell Nebula. You've already seen a couple of pictures of this. This particular picture I took using the 14-inch Meade telescope that is now in full operation at FLO. It's in one of the domes there, and Paul Collinger, when he gets back from his Northern Ontario tour, has promised that he will start training people on how to use it. We've had some problems with it, but it's now working quite well, and the mount can track just very, very accurately. This photograph was several 30-second exposures, and I didn't use any guiding at all. It was just the tracking of the mount that followed it, and the stars are pinpoints. They're just beautiful. So it's quite a good telescope and good mount. And if anybody's interested in trying out some astrophotography, this would be a great telescope to learn on. And so I also tried at the same time, while I was taking the pictures with the Meade telescope, I set up my own little William Optics 73mm telescope and aimed at NGC 6781, the ghost of the moon. And this has turned out quite nicely. This is a little bit longer exposure than Tony had. These are 2-minute exposures stacked up. And as he said, it's very similar to the Ring Nebula in Lyra, but much deeper red around the exterior of it. The interior is like the Ring Nebula. It's a sort of a pale greeny blue color. So a very interesting little nebula there. Then at the star party on the 15th of June, well, we didn't get the aurora that night, but it was a lovely clear night, beautifully, beautifully clear. And after showing some people my live stacking of various galaxies and clusters, I thought, well, you know, I've heard that there's a comet coming. and maybe I can try it out. And so I looked at the latest prediction of where the comet was, and it was very close to a brighter star, number 89 in Leo. So that's what I aimed at. And just with a 15-second exposure, I could actually see it on the laptop screen. So I said, oh, okay, here we go. And I started live stacking. And it was just fascinating to see the picture show up on the screen, gradually getting brighter and brighter and more distinct, with a definite tail streaming away almost directly from 89 Leo. So this is about 117, I think it was, individual 15-second exposures stacked up. So that was quite a treat for the June star party. Now, we should keep our eye on this comet. It will be coming much closer and it will approaching its perihelion. The best views from Canada should be in October. So I'm hoping that, you know, with it looking so good at this point, by October, it should be quite a spectacular sight. All going well. So those were the observing challenges. Oh, we missed a picture or two. I did have a drawing of the moon as well. I hope I saw some on the Discord server. I hope other people have tried actually sketching the moon, because it does allow you to observe a lot more things if you can actually focus in and look carefully and draw what you're seeing. So gold stars to some people who took those challenges. Tony did quite a lot of them. He did a nice drawing of the crater Plato. And as you saw, his picture of NGC 6781 and also the Dumbbell Nebula. Oscar had a nice picture of Summer Triangle and M27. Xavier did a lovely drawing of Mare Humorum. Bob seems to be a month behind. He's showing some of his pictures of the previous month's challenges, as he did before. And Fred Burt has been also keeping an eye on T Corona Borealis. So for this month, we still have the Summer Triangle, but now you have a better chance of seeing the Milky Way. And so I really hope people manage to get out of town, go somewhere really dark, go to a cottage, go to a lake, and have a look at the Milky Way. This is a really lovely time of year for observing the Milky Way, our own galaxy. And I thought for this month I would focus on the clusters of stars. There's so many stars in the Milky Way, and they're not evenly distributed by any means. They're all in clumps and groups, as you can see in this picture that I took from a cottage over a lake looking south. And you can see the Milky Way is quite a fascinating structure. It's got so much involved in it. It's got stars, it's got dark clouds, it's got clouds of glowing gas as well. Almost so much going on here. So these are the challenges. The Milky Way itself. See if you can see it. Take a picture of it. You don't need anything special. A camera with a long exposure will take beautiful pictures. We already have some on the Discord server. Oscar did a nice one. Andrea did a lovely one beside a lighthouse. So I'd like to see some other pictures of the Milky Way. And if you can, you know, aim like I have here, down close to the horizon, so that you can get a bit of the Earth in the picture as well. It can really make for a nice composition. Within the Milky Way, as I say, there's so many different clumps and groupings of stars. So the second level challenge, you might need a pair of binoculars, but it is visible to the naked eye. M24, the small Sagittarius star cloud. Whoop, I did that again. Up here. And if you can find the shape of Sagittarius, which to me looked more like a teapot, just above the spout or above the top of the teapot, there's this definite clump of stars within a surrounding of dark nebula. That's M24, the small Sagittarius star cloud, and it's quite a fascinating structure. It really does pay off to see it with some binoculars. A little bit higher up, just near Aquila, which is just off the picture here, in the constellation of Scutum, you have the wild duck cluster, M11. You might need a fairly strong pair of binoculars or a small telescope to actually see this as a cluster, but it's a very rich cluster, quite bright, and quite an interesting little clump of stars to have a look at here. And for a real challenge, this is going to be kind of difficult if you want to take a picture. Go back to M24 and look just in the top corner of it here. And there's even a clump within a clump, NGC 6603, another cluster of stars within the bigger cluster of M24. So lots of scope for looking at groups of stars within the Milky Way. And that's your challenges for this month. For the solar system challenge, wow, we've got planets again. For the last few months, the planets have all been early in the morning. And I'm sorry, I don't do mornings. But now finally, we've got a couple of planets in the evening sky. Now, it will be a bit of a challenge because they're not very far away from the sun, but both Venus and Mercury are starting to become visible after sunset. Now, Mercury will be nicely placed 2 nights from now, July 7th. So if you get a chance to go out, the moon will be just a thin crescent in the twilight. And then if you look down towards the horizon from the moon, you should be able to see a little spark of light, and that will be Mercury. So get out your binoculars, hope for clear skies, and see if you can find Mercury. Venus will be visible for the rest of the month, again in the twilight. It keeps moving along the horizon. It's never going to get very high until much later in the year. So it's going to be a bit of a challenge to separate it out from the twilight glow. But that's your challenge for the solar system this month. And of course, keep looking for that blaze star. Will it blow up? We don't know. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. And my apologies for missing that moon sketch. I'm not sure how that happened, but so yeah. Okay, our tentative program for next month. I hope to be inviting back Robin Fiore. She's confirmed. She's spoken to us at least twice previously. She works with NRC and particularly dealing with space weather and security of infrastructure during solar events such as we witnessed in May. So I'll be interested to hear on her take on what else happened apart from what we observed in the Aurora. We've got Tom Jaworski introducing his C-Star Smart Scope. I know there's a lot of interest in this. It'll be a chance to hear it from the horse's mouth about where he thinks it's going. And also John Thompson will be doing an unboxing of his particular C-Star. Plus the usual observation reports and future challenges. Estelle's Pick of the Month, Under Alien Skies, and Sightseer's Guide to the Universe. It sounds like Hitchhiker's Guide, apparently, but not. Fred Lossing Observatory, members only star party coming up tomorrow. I think conditions look reasonably reasonable. Remember, that's members and guests only. And the go, no-go has probably already gone out from Gordon already. Our thanks to the usual suspects for looking after Flow, the Media Library, the Telescope Library. Now, membership info, these are the people that keep the wheels of industry turning in the club, often hiding in the background, but our thanks to them. Total attendance, 74, not bad for the middle of summer. Okay, that would be 79 then, Chris. So, yeah, quite pleasing. Thanks to everybody who presented tonight. Thanks to our hosts here, Chris up there in the booth and the logistics team here at Chasm, and thanks to RASC National for access to the Zoom account. Any comments, complaints, critiques, whatever, to me, please, as meeting chair at ottawa.rasc.ca, or you can find me on the Discord server as Mick Wilson. After the event, good food, good company, good booze at Liam Maguire's on St. Laurent Road, just near Innes. Hope to see you there. Otherwise, see you on the 9th of August, both here and on Zoom. There's another webinar. Just a heads up, for the November meeting, we will be resorting to Zoom only. Is that still correct, Chris? Okay, be warned that we may be reverting to Zoom only for the November meeting. Bit of a clash with the bookings for this room. So otherwise, I wish you all good night, happy travels, and see you in a month's time. Cheers.